Welcome to the T. Allen Haynes Radio Show. Conversations with elite business leaders from around the world. And now, here is your host, T. Allen Haynes.
All right, welcome back to the show. We've got a great guest for you today. We have Jude Rake, and he is a proven leader with 30-plus year track record of building businesses to create economic value from well-known consumer packaged goods companies such as Clorox, PepsiCo, and S.C. Johnson to smaller family-owned and private equity-backed businesses. He founded JDR Growth Partners to help other leaders achieve sustainable growth. But before founding JDR Growth Partners, Mr. Rake was CEO at ETA, Papyrus-Recycled Greetings, and Recycled Paper Greetings. He also served as President and Chief Operating Officer at Fellows. In each of these roles, Mr. Rake built and led impressive leadership teams that fueled profitable growth and significant improvements in workforce commitment, performance, and results. Jude, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tracy. It's nice to be with you.
I'm so glad you're here as well. So let's just get right into it. Tell me about your business and the types of customers or clients that you help.
Tracy, I work with leaders typically of mid-cap size companies, CEOs and board members, but also other leaders in the C-suite who are challenged by the feeling that their team could achieve more. They typically, feel like they want to raise the bar with their team, get them more engaged, and it's usually through a strategic planning exercise. And the promise I make is as we get into our work together, they see more and more of their people throughout their organization more engaged to winning and committed to winning.
Awesome. How did you get started in this business?
Well, it actually goes back many years. When I became an officer at S.C. Johnson, I started this strategic planning exercise that I developed. We were working with the Boston Consulting Group, and I was frustrated because I felt like too much work was being handed off to the consulting firm, and the company leaders weren't engaged enough with them. So I came up with this methodology where I connected people on the consulting team with my own leadership team, and we developed a strategic plan for our business. And by the time we got finished, my team owned it because we put it into their performance objectives, and because they were involved in building the plan rather than outsourcing it to a consultant, we achieved much better results in the long run. So I used that method over the years and then eventually left big companies and moved into roles as CEO, turning around smaller companies, and used the methodology and kept molding it and shaping it. And over the years, I had people who would work for me who call me and say, hey, can you send me that or that course you taught back in the day? And over about a 10, 15-year period, I thought there's a market out here. There's a real need for this type of work. And so after I left my last CEO job, I got a couple calls asking for help and really didn't intend to start a consulting firm, but one thing led to another, and here I am. I've got a whole cadre of clients, and I'm really happy because I'm helping people build their business by elevating the engagement of their team.
Awesome. Well, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that with us. What are you finding that's, one of the biggest obstacles or, from a leadership standpoint that you're finding in the marketplace or keeping them from achieving the goals that they're achieving or wanting to achieve?
Yeah, it's the same thing I saw, especially in bigger companies. The longer we do what we do, the more we expect people to see things the way we see it. And a lot of times the biggest obstacle for me is just people having blinders on and coming into work every day and doing the same thing over and over, and they need somebody to provoke them and maybe to get them to look at something a little bit differently. And when we start to do that and we engage people and ask the right questions, because so much of leadership is about the questions that you ask, and we start getting people connected cross-functionally and starting to collaborate with everything they're doing, often that helps overcome those obstacles to change.
Awesome. One of these questions that I love asking the entrepreneurs that I interview along the way, was there a book that influenced you, maybe some kind of leader that influenced you along the way to do what you're doing today?
Oh yeah, so many. I really feel blessed. I've had so many great leaders dating all the way back to my days playing sports, and great coaches who taught me that hustle often trumps talent when talent isn't trying hard enough. I've had some terrific bosses. I had some great professors at the University of Chicago. So I've really been lucky. And some of the books I've loved, Leadership is an Art by Max Dupree, really kind of first introduced me to the idea of servant leadership, and, kind of connected me to actually my fraternity in college. The motto was the helping hand. And it really connected me because I always felt like the leaders a lot of times that I looked up to in the companies were too isolated in their corner office. And I was fortunate enough to have bosses who felt a real conscientious responsibility to the people they lead, and they modeled that for me. And so I always felt in any role I took on that my job was to serve the people and the team and get everybody together and raise the bar and connect people and get the most out of them and bring out the best in them. And so books that really motivated me over to, Good to Great. A lot of Jim Collins' work I think is awesome, Built to Last. Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Those are books that really meant a lot to me and helped me form my principles and philosophy on leadership.
Jude, I've read a little bit about your background, of course, and I feel your passion, but what is it that makes you get up out of bed every day to do what you do?
It's actually why I'm finding myself so happy in a role. I never thought I'd enjoy being a consultant, but it's kind of the intersection of four things. I mean, one is I really like helping other people. It brings a lot of meaning to my life. I've been involved in nonprofits and in the community, and I like that even when I was working at big companies. And now in this role, I can help. Most of my clients are family-owned businesses, and it really brings me a lot of joy seeing the impact I can help them have on their business and helping not only the business grow profitably and in a sustainable way, but also the people who work there be happier. So that's one thing. The other one is I really like learning and growing, and in this role, I'm working with a lot of different businesses and different industries, so I'm learning every day from the people I work with, which is really fun. It's also fun to be building my own legacy. I've built a lot of other people's brands over the years and other companies, and it's been fun to build my own legacy, and fortunately I'm able to make a little bit of money doing it. So those four things get me up in the morning. That's
a great combination.
It's all about purpose.
There you go. Back to the problem a little bit. The biggest misconception that you're finding, I mean, leadership is a broad term, but the biggest misconception that you're finding within these people that bring you on to help them, what are you finding to be that biggest misconception about leadership?
Well, oftentimes the leader or their board feels that there's a lack of strategic direction in their organization, so they're interested in kicking off a strategic planning exercise, but a lot of consultants will take that on and go do all the analysis outside of the company. They may come in and interview people, but their team will do it, and so that's, I think, given strategic planning a bit of a bad rap, because oftentimes what ends up happening is those proposals come in, they sound great in the boardroom, but then they get shelved, and no one really engages in executing them because they don't really believe in them and they weren't part of developing them. So my whole process is about getting the leadership of the organization as well as some really key difference makers involved in the planning process. So I actually come in and teach the organization how to do the strategic planning. And my big belief is that Dwight Eisenhower once said, it's about the planning, not the plan. So it's not about that final plan. In fact, I've seen mediocre plans that deliver great results because everybody involved was engaged in executing it, and they had their arms locked. They were aligned, and they knew where they were going and how they were going to get there. So that's a big part of what I do is coming in and really helping leaders force multiply their influence by asking the right questions and getting some difference makers in their organization to kind of reach out broadly, even all the way out to the front lines of the organization, and get them involved in the planning. So once we launch it, there's some ownership and people are fired up about making it happen.
Very good. Can you tell us and describe to us how you've actually helped someone overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, the key mechanism that I use, first I go in and do a deep dive. So I do a lot of one-on-one interviews. So I need to get a lay of the land, and people are usually pretty willing to open up. And but the key mechanism is I do daily work sessions. I don't do 3 days or 2 days. One of the things when I was a CEO I always hated is when somebody wanted to take us off site and waste our time with 3 days of work that could have been done in a day. So I stick to a day. We lock ourselves in a room. And then I've got a process where I start taking them through 9 principles, 9 key leadership principles that help bridge strategy into excellent execution. And we roll up our sleeves and we work together, and we do those about every month for 6 months. And in between those, I coach them as they reach out and build other teams. And like I said, force multiply the influence of what we're doing and make sure we're catching blind spots. And that's a big part of it. And within a couple months, typically I see the CEO or whoever the point person is I'm working with saying to me that, wow, we're getting ideas coming from all over the place right now. And we don't have to wait until we've got a plan down on a piece of paper. We're already taking action on some of these ideas because they're clearly something that should be done. And largely, a lot of time, it's just because we asked.
What are the problems that they're facing? I mean, why is it that they look at the leadership to make what kind of change, or what are they trying to overcome?
You know, it's a variety of things. I mean, typically, and I find it kind of falls under 5 buckets. I mean, typically the leader or the leadership team is so busy managing the day-to-day that they just can't find time to plan for the future, or they've never done it. They don't have a methodology to do it. Or if they do have a sound strategy, it's just not getting executed the way they would like. Again, oftentimes because you don't have ownership. A lot of leaders will set priorities, but they'll just roll it out, send it out, and then the next level down sets their priorities using those priorities, and then the next level down, and all of a sudden it exponentially multiplies. And you get down to the front line, the people doing the real work, and they've got 150 priorities. I call it the smorgasbord approach, and they just pick from whatever they like on the list. And suddenly, instead of a rowing crew rowing at the same cadence, you've got a rowing crew, everybody's rowing out of cadence. So I help them deal with that. The third one is a lot of times they have talented people, but their people seem to be flailing without a focused and well-articulated vision and strategic direction. And then the fourth one, a lot of times we'll see a flavor of the day approach to revenue generation at the company, where we're kind of whipsawing people back and forth. And then finally, I hear a lot of leaders say that their workforce is not as committed to company goals as they want them to be. And they believe that many of their people in their organization could perform at a higher level. So those are typically the problems that I help leaders solve.
When you bring them all in, is it all C-suite executives, or part of the rank and file involved as well, as far as the decision-making process on the direction? How does that work out?
It really depends on the situation. I don't have a cookie-cutter approach. I actually think that these approaches need to be tailored to the unique needs of the business. Typically, it is the leadership team. But there are certain situations where we'll bring in a few key difference makers because we want to make sure we've got a 360-degree view of the business. The important part of the process, though, is once we start deciding, what functions, I call them vectors, that we're going to be developing objectives, goals, strategies, and measures on, that we've got a leader on that core team that's going to reach out and build their own sub-team to do some of the same work we're doing out into the organization, and they're going to be responsible for reaching even deeper, even if it's over a beverage or whatever, but asking some of the same questions and doing some of the same analytics. I mean, analytics and digging deep, that's kind of cost of entry in my book. Any plan's got to have that. What's different about this plan is the level of engagement we drive and the amount of participation we're able to drive throughout the company without slowing us down.
Being a former CEO, you must have a great perspective on that to be able to help others achieve that. So that's awesome.
It's helped to walk a few miles in those shoes, for sure.
There you go. What would be your best piece of advice to the listener who's considering, making a change or helping them with their leadership cadre and moving forward with their company? What would be your best piece of advice?
Well, leaders have a lot of things on their plate, and I can fully appreciate it, having been there. A couple of the big ones, right, are really developing talent and making sure that your leadership team knows that their number one job is force multiplying their leadership influence. It's not command and control. It's not telling people what to do. It's building leaders at all levels of the company. And this process that I use is a great mechanism to do that. Another key priority most leaders know this, is helping people make tough choices. It's not about just demanding better profits and better sales. It's how do you give them a framework or some riverbanks. And this process is designed to really focus in on what are our strengths, what are our core values, and how do we leverage those to build the business and simplify and get rid of some of the work that's going on that really is just getting in our way. And if we can move some of those resources behind the things that really matter, it's going to help us accelerate profitable growth.
Excellent. You mentioned something earlier about something unique you do is some of the consultants come in for 3 days and waste time and take you off site. So you had a good point there about you take 1 day and you're able to accomplish that. Could you go into that just a little bit more?
Well, I just like to keep it fast-paced, and one of my commitments is I never want to look around the room and see a leader of a function or a CEO feeling like we're wasting their time, because I've been in those shoes. And we oftentimes will just do it right on site, and we'll just lock ourselves in a room. And it takes more than 1 day, but I don't like pulling them away from their job for more than a day at a time, because I think they need to dip into this process and then go back to work. And it really provokes some thinking. And inevitably, I get phone calls or I dip in, they say, I've been thinking about this, and you really provoked us to look at this a little differently with my team. And then we come back for that next work session. We take it to the next level, and it just has a building approach. It's like a snowball effect.
Mm-hmm. I understand you have a new book coming out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's all about what we've been talking about, really. It's mostly about leadership. I really believe that a lot of leaders ascend into higher levels of influence in organizations, mostly because they're smart, they're assertive, and they delivered good results. But it's not always necessarily because they're good at leading people. So that's what this book is about, because I think leading people becomes increasingly important the farther leaders climb up the ladder.
As far as leaders not being, qualified to lead, you have people in positions that are good at their skill, but they're not necessarily leaders. So this kind of closes that gap.
Yeah, some companies are good at leadership development and training, but I find that most organizations treat leadership as though it's an innate ability. They invest heavily in teaching their people, all the routine skills they provide, but they don't really provide a lot of guidance when it comes to leadership development. So I think that's why so many organizations are under-led, and the facts would prove it. The average level of engagement across the country is 21%, while 86% of people are fully satisfied with their job. They've got a community, they get a paycheck, they put food on the table, but I think the biggest source of untapped economic potential in our society is closing that gap and getting more and more people truly engaged and wanting to raise the bar and step up and elevate performance. And what they want to know is, what's our plan here? How are we going to win? And what's my role in winning? Because everybody wants to win, but if we haven't given them a clear vision on how they can make a difference, then we haven't fulfilled our leadership role.
What would you recommend to be the first thing that a CEO would do in regard to getting their leadership where it needs to be productive and being at a leadership level? What would you consider them advice that you would give them to go in that direction or be ready to start? What would be your advice? What would be the first thing?
Sure. The most important thing is, you've probably heard the term listening tours, but really just getting out of the office and out among people and listening and really doing the same thing I do, really, even as a helper, is a deep dive and really making sure they're seeing the business and the marketplace through the eyes of not only the people, but more importantly, their customers and their consumers. And I just think that's really vital. Get out and ask the questions, and because otherwise they're going to get a filtered view of the world. It's really hard to get that unvarnished view when you get into that C-suite position. So setting up mechanisms to make sure you're getting the brutal facts is really important.
Do you see that as one of the challenges, especially being a former CEO, that some CEOs get themselves in a silo and they don't get out and really see what's going on? And do you see a pattern of that, or is it getting better, or how's that evolving?
Well, I think it's getting harder. There's just more and more information overload, and it's really easy to get consumed by the important duties of managing stakeholder relationships and the people that control the purse strings. Those are important. It's really easy to get kind of sucked into working with the executives and losing touch with the more important people that use your products or services, and fighting fire drills and carving out the time to really spend with people. And I always loved doing Delta breakfasts. We would do them every 2 weeks, and with a cross-section of 10, 12, buy people bagels and sit down and chat about what's going on in their job, and from all different walks of the company, and get out into the factories and the warehouse and walk the floors. And it takes a commitment to do that, because it's real easy to cancel those type of sessions when pressing, urgent issues are hitting, like what's our cost of capital and how we get in the money we need to invest in growth.
Excellent. Well, if the listener's ready to find out more about how you can help them, how can they do that?
They can go to my website at www.jdrgrowthpartners.com, and there's some more information there. There's a manifesto and a little bit of information about the solution that I provide. And then I am going to be launching a book shortly. And I think that they'll find that to be a quick and interesting read, because it's also packed with some tools. It's not just a bunch of theory. There are actually some tools and tips in there that I think any leader could find useful. Excellent.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show. You gave a lot of great nuggets for leaders, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. It was nice chatting with you.
Well, there you have it for this edition of the show. We'll see you the next time.
Thanks for listening to the T. Allen Haynes Radio Show with T. Allen Haynes. Conversations with elite business leaders from around the world. We will see you next time on the T. Allen Haynes Radio Show.